So just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract, and obviously we just heard on the comms Bob and Doug getting ready to arm the launch escape system, and so that is something that protects them all the way.
Test earlier this year and now works on the Starlink team. Nick, on Wednesday you talked about the launch escape system. Could you just give us a brief summary today for those that are joining today?
Sure. So the launch escapes are our ultimate safety feature to keep Bob and Doug safe in the event of a major Falcon anomaly on the pad. The system is designed to automatically fire. It will detect a dangerous condition developing. And if that happens, Dragon will use its 8 Super Draco engines to push the capsule off and away to a safe distance away from this capability is absolutely critical. It's what keeps the crew safe, and we're now active and armed on the pad protecting the crew.
And as you mentioned, the launch escape system
in the ocean. But since a launch escape can happen while the vehicle's on the pad or anywhere in flight up through orbit, it could be splashing down right off the crew. It could be splashing down thousands of miles away in the North Atlantic. If that happens, to make sure we can get to Bob and Doug as quickly as possible, the Space Force Space Wing Task Force 45 has pararescue teams staged and ready all around the world, ready to drop in and rescue Bob and Doug as soon as possible.
And you mentioned that the launch escape system will keep them safe all the way up to orbit. What other options are there after Dragon is in orbit?
Sure. So if for any reason we're unable to dock to the International Space Station, we have several pre-planned return trajectories, which will bring the capsule down to a splashdown point close to shore, where NASA and SpaceX recovery forces will be waiting to recover them. It'll look like an otherwise totally normal recovery operation, except for the early end of mission. This operation is something we're doing with one of 2 identical crew recovery ships. We do that because the landing sites, we want to maintain as much flexibility as possible. There could be changing weather conditions that bring down one site and leave the other one up. So we have those 2 identical ships, one in the Atlantic, one in the Gulf of Mexico. And our space operations team can redirect the spacecraft to go to whichever site is the safest option for the crew at that time.
And with the vehicle, in almost any scenario, it sounds like the vehicle will land into the ocean. And it may look like a gentle landing into the ocean, but it's a pretty dynamic event happening. And you mentioned there are teams that are ready to go and rescue the vehicle and the astronauts on board. How do you prepare for something like that, especially with so many different scenarios that could happen?
Sure. So we're lucky to have had a decade of recovery experience with Cargo Dragon 1 in our previous trips to the International Space Station. That, along with our booster recovery missions, we've got a great team of recovery operators here who have a lot of offshore experience with our spacecraft. The system, though, that we took that experience, we built up a new crew recovery ship, 2 identical crew recovery ships, I should say, which have a lot of those lessons learned baked into the design of that ship. These new ships have complete medical facilities, an operational helipad, and redundant communications, power, and propulsion to make sure they're robust and ready for anything we encounter offshore. We've also done tons of training exercises with the SpaceX team, the NASA team, and the rescue forces I mentioned earlier, practicing capsule recovery, where we have to get the crew out of the capsule while they're still in the water, as well as those helicopter evacuations, taking off and landing from the pad many times, so that we make sure the team is do that. They're all staged and ready.
From American soil since 2011. The launch escape system is armed, which, as you know, happens before, and Dragon propellant load, that's the propellants that are inside of the, not the rocket. Prop load for Dragon took place weeks ago and just a few miles down the road in what we call Dragonland. And those propellants, they are methyl hydrazine, which is the fuel that we use. It's hypergolic fuel. And NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's the oxidizer. Those two come together and they ignite in space to propel the vehicle. You don't need that TTEB or a third thing to ignite because hypergolic propellants don't require it. You just need the fuel and the oxidizer. And as you just heard, load has started on Falcon 9.
Evet. Evet. Sanırım artık hazırız. Kendimizi de gösterelim. Evet arkadaşlar. Umarım sesim geliyordur. Ses. Evet, ses gidiyor galiba şu an. Sorular varsa soru alabiliriz. Bir yandan da ne olup bittiğine dair ses de verebilirim size. Onu dinleyebilirsiniz. Evet, gelen giden yok gibi. Şu an sadece 2 kişi izliyor bizi. Evet, gelen giden yok gibi. Şu an sadece Evet, şu anda fırlatma ile ilgili hazırlıklar tamamlanıyor. Ve bu dakikadan sonra artık şu anda yaklaşık 28 dakikalık bir süre mevcut. Bu 28 dakikalık süre sonrasında da artık fırlatma gerçekleşecek ve SpaceX Uluslararası Uzay İstasyonu'na insan taşıyan ilk özel şirket olma unvanını kazanacak. İzleyip göreceğiz. Şu anda fırlatma manevraları ile ilgili kısım anlatılıyor. Evet, şu anda pardon.
Larger than the docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up those really big cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And next up on the trip, going to cover all the operations following that final departure maneuver. That's going to include events like the trunk separation, closing of the deorbit burn, and then eventually as they get into the atmosphere, the deployment of the drogue and the main parachutes, and all of that ends with splashdown Florida coast. At that point, teams from SpaceX will move in with their recovery ship, grab the capsule out of the water, and work to get Bob and Doug out of Dragon after a successful mission in space. So we are 26 minutes away from launch. Falcon 9 is continuing. Let's check in one more time down with the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. We are so pumped right now because things have cleared up and it looks like we might actually do this today. If you're just joining us, we are now 25 minutes, 46 seconds and counting from the first launch of us to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. This will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. And we want to share with you the results of a poll we asked